You've read articles, watched YouTube videos, and maybe even taken courses on Excel, but you're still spending way too much time in Excel. Shortcuts and formulas can only take you so far. You need field-tested hacks that can work in a pinch to really make a difference in your career. I'm Mike, and for over a decade, I've worked in finance at companies from the Fortune 100 to brand new startups. Over that time, I've spent over 15,000 hours in Excel. Yes, I actually did the math because I'm a finance nerd. And in that time, I've tried every single hack, technique, shortcut, you name it. The problem is, most of them didn't address my issue, and that issue is last-minute changes, rewrites, executive feedback, and every other detailed change that just drains your time. So what I did was I started asking around for unconventional tricks. I polled my team, talked to my peers, set up forums at work, dug through the depths of Reddit, and I even visited some Microsoft forums. Along the way, I built a library of Excel hacks to handle the smaller tasks and tweaks that just drain your time and can't be solved by a keyboard shortcut. And today, I'm going to share that library with you. Make sure to stick around to the end because I think the last couple tips are actually going to be your favorite. I know they're my favorite. And if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so that you never miss out on our weekly finance hacks and insider tips. I post a new video every single Monday, and trust me, you do not want to miss what I've got coming up next week. So in this video, I'm not here to tell you to use keyboard shortcuts or have an argument if index match or VLOOKUP is better. Pro tip, it's neither of them, it's XLOOKUP, but that's beside the point. I'm going to take you through 11 tricks I use in Excel almost every single day to help you put out awesome work and save time and look like a complete rock star. So with that, let's get started. So I've got an Excel workbook open. We're going to do each hack on a different tab. We're going to go through these 11 hacks one by one. Just to point out at the end, I've got some sales data that I pulled off the internet. There's some great resources for data modeling, things like that to get real data sets to practice with. So this is a real data set I pulled off the internet, and we'll use this in a few of the examples. So let's get started with number one. Number one is the fastest way to flip signs. I don't know about you, but earlier in my career, I would literally sit there and flip signs one by one, or I would do like equals -1, but there's a much faster way. Let's type in a couple of numbers here. And let's say that I want all of these to go negative. So again, the old-fashioned way I would have done like that, you don't want to do that. So here's what we're going to do, and this works at scale across the biggest data sets you can imagine. So we're going to type in a -1 here. We're going to copy it. We're going to come over to our set. We're going to go to paste special. We want to paste special values and then use these operation functions down here. You can actually take what you're pasting and use it to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. So we're going to hit multiply. Boom. Now they're all negative. So let's say we want to reverse these numbers. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to take our -1. We're going to copy it. We're going to paste special values, and we're just going to multiply it again. And everything is back to positive. Now on to technique number 2. Technique number 2 is related to the first one. It's converting thousands to millions using those exact same functions. Again, I used to do this with formulas. It was really slow, it was painful, but there's a fast way to do this. So let's come down. Let's say we want to go 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. We'll fix this one up here. And to do this, I'm just going to type in 1,000 because I want to take these thousands down to millions. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste special. This time I'm going to divide instead of multiply. And now everything is in millions. So instead of 1 million being in thousands, now it's in a million. Super easy, super fast, and you can do this across the biggest data sets you can possibly imagine. It's just a fast way to convert to whole numbers, thousands, millions, whatever you need to do. Now for tip number 3, we're going to talk about building dynamic reports using data validation. So how do you do this? Well, first, let's pull in some data using a dynamic formula like a sum if that we want to look at. So we'll go to our sales data, and I want to use easy examples so you kind of get the gist of this. Let's see. We're going to pull our store cities here. I'm going to come over here, a fast way to get a clean list. I'm just going to paste the values. Okay. I'm going to come back here. I'm just going to paste the values. All right, then I'm going to come to my data. I'm going to remove duplicates. And now I've got this great list of all the cities in the report. Delete that. I'm going to take my list. All right, there's my list. I'm going to put my list over here. And then I want to use this first cell right here as an input. So I'm going to go to data validation. Data validation. I want to allow a list. And I'm going to reference a source. That list is going to be right over here. All right. And there is our list. So now if I wanted to go like New York, New York, there it is. Los Angeles, and I like to highlight these just so that we know it is an input. All right, so there's our drop down. So now that we've got our data validation set up, let's see how we use this with some actual data. So what I want to do is I want to look at the sales revenue. I want to do that for the 3 years in our data set, which is 2010, 2011, and 2012, and I want to be able to change the drop down and pull in the sales revenue. So we're going to do a sum ifs. Actually, I just need a sum if here. No, I do need a sum ifs here. We're going to come over here. We're going to look for our weekly sales. There they are. We'll lock that down. We don't want it to move. Then we're going to come back for the criteria range. All right, we want that to be the year. Lock that down. Put the year in here. All right. Then we'll come back and we're going to pull in our store city. And we're going to put that up here, and we want to lock that down. All right. And we'll do a little bit of quick formatting. I always like to format it as we go. So there's our sales revenue for Chicago. Come up here, change the drop down. Let's say we want to go to San Diego. There's your San Diego revenue. I'll do another example. There's Austin, and you can just change it. So you're using this list to allow whoever's using the report to just change the dropdown, and the whole report will update automatically. That's pretty cool. I use this all the time. All right, moving on to tip number 4. So in tip number 4, we're going to look at slicers. Slicers work in combination with pivot tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to add a pivot table. I'm going to select our entire data set. I'm going to say that we want to insert a pivot table from this range. And I want it to go to an existing worksheet that I've got here. So we're just going to pop it right there. All right, so there's our pivot table. So let's say for the pivot table, I want to pull in the store cities, and we'll kind of keep this up. We'll look at kind of our weekly sales by the store city. So now that I've got my pivot table all set up, we're going to add in the slicers. So I'm going to select my pivot table. I'm going to go to pivot table analyze, select insert slicer. And now for the slicer I want to let people filter by year. So here's our slicer. This really nice box comes up. I'm going to say I want to just look at 2010 right now. Everything updates. Let's say we wanted to go to 2012. Click that. And you can actually create multiple slicers. So like, let's say I wanted to pull in another slicer. We'll go back and do the same thing, and let's say I just want to pull in the month. Here's the month. You can pull in as many of these as you want, and it's a much easier way for your business partners or people who aren't quite as financially savvy to work with pivot tables using slicers. Super cool. Now on to tip number 5, which is PowerQuery. PowerQuery is a tool built right into your Excel. You don't need to spend any money for it. And what it does, in a nutshell, there's a lot of things you can do, but in a nutshell, if you have to clean data or transform data, it will save your steps and it will apply it to large data sets. And every time you pull in new data, it will automatically apply the same steps. So let's go ahead and use this. We're going to go back to our sales data. We've still got our range selected from the last example. We're going to go up to data, and this get and transform data section, this is where you'll find the PowerQuery tools. So we're going to say we want to get data from this table. All right, my table has headers. And here it is. So this is the PowerQuery window. I've got some other great videos. I'll put the video right up here. This video is going to tell you all about how to use PowerQuery to clean data, so I'm not going to go in depth, but PowerQuery is absolutely a fantastic tool. Just to kind of give you the gist, you can transform data up here. You can add columns, things like calculations. So just as a quick example, let's say that I wanted to just group this and I wanted to have less information come out. I'm going to say that I just want the year, the month, the store city, kind of following our same theme, and I want to sum the values. All right, and then you're going to see PowerQuery transform the data set, just like that, and then we can go back and we can load the transformed data set. So now it's going to give us this new one called table 1, which is what we just created. It's going to pull the data in. You can also leave it up in a data model so it doesn't make the files huge, but if you want to send it, you pop it in this way. Here's our data set all done and set up for you. And that transformation I did, if I pulled in new data, it would run that same step again so you can automate it and don't have to keep doing brand new every single time. And again, make sure to check out that video that I shared for more information on PowerQuery. All right, so the next thing I want to show you is Name Manager. Name Manager allows you to define a name for any range in your Excel workbook, and then you can use that name instead of the range to reference it. The best part about this is, let's say that you had a reference that was to specific rows and columns. By using the name, if you adjust it, like let's say you make a table bigger, by using the name, it will automatically adjust with it, and you won't have to worry about Excel cutting off some of your data. So to show you how to use Name Manager, I've borrowed our example from number 4 where we did data validation, because this is a really good way to show you how to do a reference. So what I want to do is we've got our drop down here in C3, and I want to name this as our drop down so I can reference that instead of referencing C3. So I'm going to go to Formulas, I'm going to go to Name Manager, and I want to hit Define Name. And I'm going to call C3 dropdown. And you can reference dropdown anywhere in the workbook. You can also allow it to just be confined to a single tab, but we want this to be available for the whole workbook. And I like to leave notes to myself, dropdown for revenue by city. Okay, so now that I've named it, let's pop it into our formula. So I'm going to come here, we're going to go to C3, and instead of that, we're going to just type in dropdown. You'll see it comes up right here. Because this is a definition in Excel, you don't need to use quotes around it like you normally would for text, because it's not actually text, it's a defined range. And there we go, same result as before. If we drag these down, same result as before, but now you're referencing dropdown. So if, let's say I wanted to move dropdown, I'll just pop it over here. You see, nothing had to change, and the formula reference doesn't have to change because it still references dropdown. To go see all the names you defined, you can click this Name Manager button, and here's a definition of everything. Excel will automatically create a lot, like when I created the table, it automatically named it Table 1. When I added the slicer, it automatically defined the slicer. So there will be some stuff in here you didn't directly create, but it's a great reference to just go straight to things instead of having to reference the range every time. All right, on to number 7. Comments. Now you might be going, Mike, it's a comment, it has nothing to do with using Excel. But you would be wrong. Comments are probably one of the most important functions in Excel, and this has saved me from so many jams. Let's say that you wanted to put in inputs here, right? Like let's say you wanted to say, I've got an inflation rate that I'm going to assume, and then I've got store square footage, just random things that might be relevant to a retail environment. So then for the inflation rate, we're going to say 2.8%, and the store square footage, we're going to say 2,000, okay? So someone comes back in and says, well, where on earth did you get these? Because executives will love to ask you questions to explain where you got your assumptions. Things like this are where comments come in. Anywhere that you have a hard-coded input, anywhere that you're making an adjustment to a formula from different things, leave a comment and your teammates or whoever takes the file over will love you. So like for inflation rate, an example that I could do is I could come up here to insert, I'll go to comment. For this one, I'm gonna say inflation rate sourced from, we'll say Statista, great website for data. And then we'll come down to store square footage, and I'll say, spoke with John Smith at the store. So then you're basically saying John Smith gave it to me. If you have any questions, go ask him. And then these comments will stay here. Anyone who has access to the file will see them, and they'll know exactly what we're doing, why you were doing it, and it will save so much time. Also, I don't know about you, but I often, if I don't touch a file for several months, I'll forget what I did and why I was doing it. So this even helps me remind myself what I was doing and why I did it. Number 8, recording macros. There are a lot of good use cases for macros, but they're pretty painful to code in VBA, and not a lot of people record in VBA. So what I recommend is actually recording macros. Now, similar to PowerQuery, I've got a great video that I'll post right here. That video is going to tell you all about how to record macros. So let me just give you a quick summary of the way you would do this. Let's say that I want to record a macro. It's going to say, hello, I am Mike. Okay, and let's just say I want to move these somewhere else on the page. So I'm going to go to the Developer tab. I'm going to hit Record Macro. I'm going to call this move. Hello. And we'll hit OK. So now it's recording. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to copy these. I'm going to paste them down here. And then I'm going to add complete. And again, this is a very basic example because I've got videos that go in depth on this. And then we're going to hit stop recording. OK. Now let me move this back to where it was. All right. And let's go to macros and we'll run the macro. Boom, just like that. It recorded every single step I did. It did all the steps, placed it where you need it to be. So it's a good way for very small kind of reiterative processes without any coding. You can just run the macro, send it along your way, and move on. Tip number 9, Sparklines. Sparklines are a really good way to add visual context. We all know about conditional formatting and what that can do, but Sparklines are a way to add some additional context to things where conditional formatting may not necessarily make the most sense. So let's put an example here. Let's say I've got revenue across my 3 years, and I am just gonna type these in the interests of ease, and we'll say New York, Chicago, and Boston, and then let's put in some kind of dramatic revenue. So let's go 1,000, 1,500, 4,000. Let's say this is 1,000, 4,000, 1,000. We'll have this one start up front. 3,000. 1,000. All right, so now we're going to go to Insert. We're going to go to Sparklines. So what I want to do is select my data range there, and I want to populate it here. So the data range is the data you want to chart. The location is where you want the sparkline to be. And there's a sparkline showing how the data appears. And we can do this for the other ones. Actually, I believe I can just copy those right down. There you go. And so this is a visual representation of how each line is performing. This is a really cool tool to put on reports because it very quickly shows what the data is doing without you having to actually look at the data. All right, tip number 10, go-to special. There's 2 ways that I most commonly use go-to special. The first way is to go only to visible rows and jump over hidden rows. The second is to remove blank rows. So let me show you how both of those work. So let's come here and say I've got these 3 numbers right here. And I come down here, I'm going to hide row 5. I copy this, I paste, oh, and my 3 numbers came back because I copied everything. All right, so I'm going to come up here, I'm going to go find and select, go to special. There's a lot of options in here. Again, there's 2 that I primarily use. I'm going to hit visible cells only. You'll see it kind of went down that it's just selecting these 2. I will copy, I will paste, and now it just gave me the 2. This is very helpful if you want to filter a giant data set. Once you filter the data set, you can copy and paste just the visible cells. In a similar fashion, we'll clear this out here. We can also do this with blank rows. So we'll go 1,000, 1,000, blank, 1,000. All right. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to find and select, go to special. I'm going to select this. I'm going to go to Find and Select. I'm going to go to Go To Special. I want to remove the blanks from my data set, so I'll hit OK. It has just selected the blank row, and then I can delete that out of here. Obviously, I'm using small examples to just really show you the gist of this, but you can use this across 100,000, 200,000 lines, remove all the blank rows, and it's a very fast way to clean your data up. All right, and here's our last hack. This is number 11, and honestly, I think this may have saved me more time than any of these other tips. So what I'm gonna do in this case is I'm gonna put in a chart, and we're gonna save that chart as a template to reuse it over and over, and boy, does this save a lot of time. So let's come in here, let's set up our chart. So we want to do sales revenue. So we got 2010, 2011, 2012, and then we'll put in our sales revenue. We'll just say this is 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. All right, I'm going to pop in just a really simple chart here. We'll make this a line chart because we're looking at revenue over time. Okay, there's our sales revenue. So now what I want to do is I'm going to tailor this the way I want it to be. So I personally like to get rid of the legend on the side. All right, we're going to click on these lines. We'll knock those out. All right, then I say I want this sales revenue to be bigger. Awesome. Let's bold everything. And let's get rid of this line around the outside. Awesome. So that's what we want our chart to look like. Okay, so now to save my chart as a template, I'm just going to simply right click on the chart. I'm going to hit save as template, and we'll just call this line graph. Awesome. So now I'm going to copy this data set. Let's put it over here. All right, we'll change up the revenue just so we know I'm not cheating. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this. I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to go to More Line Charts. I'm going to go to Templates, and here is my template. And would you look at that? It created the chart exactly like I had it set up. So for most of us who work in companies, we have brand standards, we need the decks to look a certain way, or even if you just want your decks to be consistent, this is a great way to build products that you use over and over again. You can use this with any type of chart, save your templates. All you have to do is load in the template, and while your data changes, all of your charts will automatically apply to it. This is huge, and again, this has probably saved me more time than anything else in here. If you take away just one thing from this video, it's that common advice is great, but common advice will give you common results. All of the tricks in here, you're rarely going to find these tricks broken down on any one site because they're not common. And if you're watching this video, I bet that you want uncommon, above average, or excellent results. So build your own library of tips and tricks just like I've done, and not just in Excel, across all of your finance or accounting role. Look for what the best people in the field are doing, save those tools, build your toolkit, and watch your career soar to new heights. If you found these Excel hacks helpful, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments which tip you're most excited to implement. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more unfiltered finance strategies coming your way every Monday. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, this is Mike signing off from F9 Finance. Cheers.